Welcome to the Coaches Show. I'm Darrin Joins, Williamson County Schools Athletic Director. Pleased to have our basketball coaches in with us today. We're talking about tonight's District 10 4A matchup at Centennial, traveling to Franklin. We've got boys head coach from Franklin, Jason Tigert. Coach, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
And Jeremy Moore, Centennial's head coach. Coach, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mr. Jones.
So, listen, we've had in the district, you've all had it. We've had a little sickness. We've had some injuries. The Coaches Show is not immune to that. So our girls' coaches aren't here today, healing up before tonight's game, so to speak. But I do want to do this. I do want to mention our girls' teams. So we've got Franklin coming in at 5 and 6. They're in 5th place. Centennial, let's just call it what it is. Coach, you guys have been struggling at 0 and 11. Coach Tigert, I'll start with you. Coach Shaw has done a really good job. She played at Franklin. She's done a good job as a head coach. To me, outside looking in, I was inside looking in for a while, but you've got some stability in that spot, and I think it's part of your improvement.
Oh, without question. There's that staff she's kept the staff together as well. She's got a good young nucleus that she's kind of grown her team around. In particular with Cecily Brandamore, just as good as anybody in the state of Tennessee from a numbers standpoint. And so she's got a really good culture going on right now. We've got girls that are putting in extra work outside of practice hours, and like I said, like you said, that continuity, not just with her, but with her staff as a whole, you could tell has paid dividends.
Your fingerprints are on that program a little bit too, Coach. Amy Elliott, who you've had a personal relationship with that family, who's now graduated, and then one of the assistant coaches,
yes,
someone you've got a background with.
Without question. It helped me out a year at Dixon County.
No doubt.
Yes.
So I would say this too, maybe I'm wrong, but outside looking in, it seems like Coach Shaw kind of leans on you a little bit too. She asks you things, y'all make decisions together, those types of things.
Well, we do a lot of things together as far as a program goes, or programs go. We've run camps together. We're in constant communication about basketball stuff in general. So she's been a really, really great hire. Being a Franklin grad, that just means a little bit extra as well. So it's a great working relationship for sure.
Coach Moore, I want you to put your AD hat on a little bit here. Okay. So Coach Moore is athletic director at Centennial High School, not only the basketball coach. And listen, social study, you got a social studies teacher. We won't talk about who maybe does a better job in the classroom here, but
it's a great time to talk about it.
Maybe it's equal. I don't know.
I can assure you, Coach Tigert gives me great guidance in the social studies classroom.
Coach Moore, kind of like what happened with Franklin, you're sort of fighting that stability thing. You talked about being at the school 5 years and 3 girls head coaches. It's tough to get it going if you're constantly switching coaches.
Yeah, and I think Coach Marcel is working hard to create that stability that we need. I thought Coach Hamilton for a couple of years did a really good job.
He did.
Had kids out, but like anywhere else, graduation happens and you sort of have to start over. And Coach Hamilton's now our softball coach, and he's doing a great job with that. But it's going to take some time. But I think Coach Marcel is patient, and it's a whole new squad, and they're learning how to practice and learning how to get places on time. So I think the winning will come, but it's definitely been a struggle for those girls. But they've kept a good attitude and work hard every day.
I love that with these schools, everything's so intertwined. You talk about the Lanes, Franklin people, but now they're kind of Centennial people. They're, Tori working for Freedom Middle School, comes out and supports you guys, Coach. In the girls' basketball programs, you've got assistant coach Justin Anderson, and then his daughter, Quincy, plays for Centennial. So talk about that a little bit, Coach Moore. That's a little different.
Yeah, and I'll give Quincy a lot of credit because from the time she was a freshman to today, she has improved.
She has.
1,000%. And that's a tribute to her and probably her dad, I'm sure, works with her as well. But great kid, very Renaissance. Quincy has a lot of different interests. She was telling me the other day about selling some artwork and things like that. So she does a lot of different things. But she has improved 1,000% in the short time that she's been working at Centennial.
And academically, this is saying something in WCS. She may be as good a student
Absolutely.
as anybody in WCS. She is a smart young lady, takes after her mother.
I hope. I know Coach Anderson well.
Coach Tiger, let's jump in and talk about your team a little bit. So you have a game on January 14th, and here's the reality of the league we're in where it's so close. You're going to have some games, not necessarily that surprises you who wins, but maybe even the margins. Your game on January 14th at home to Page, it was one that I had to do a double take, 77-49, which can happen. But since then, you've won 5 out of 6 in league play with your only loss last week at Brentwood. Was that game a turning point or just one of those things that happened? Did y'all talk about that after that game? And whatever reason, you're 5-1 since.
Well, we definitely talked about it, and then film sessions are a little bit lengthier after something like that occurs. It can somewhat be a little bit more negative, if you will, but we didn't push the panic button. It wasn't that far removed from when you in the SEC where you saw some just massive, not necessarily upsets, but just scores that just didn't. You had to do a double take, right. And Page is a really talented team that's well coached, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, later on, talk about the tournament. But it gets down to matchups, and Page is a team that matches up really well versus Franklin, and they were the better team that night. But like I said, we didn't panic, and I felt like we have responded. This team's done a good job after any loss of doing a really good job of responding well. If you kind of look through our schedule when we have lost games. And so that's something I'm very proud of our boys, is how they have responded.
You know what's interesting too, because in basketball we can talk a lot about this plan or that plan. Sometimes you shoot it well, and sometimes you don't shoot it well. I'm assuming, and I didn't watch that game, I was at a different game that night, they shot pretty well that night too. Had to. They're not going to score. People aren't scoring 77 points against your team this year.
Yeah, the next day, that's what everyone was talking about, was how well Page shot the basketball, and they did. And a lot of that was on us defensively. But they buried shots after shot after shot, and it was quite a shooting night for Page for sure.
Well, and you talk about, I know this doesn't involve your teams, but you talk about Brentwood 92-45 over Summit. That's a 47-point difference. Mm-hmm. You fast forward, they play a couple weeks later, Brentwood doesn't even score as many as the differential the first game, 48-46 Summit. So every night's certainly different, especially when it's this competitive. Coach Moore, your team's on a little bit of a run here, won 3 out of your last 4. You knew coming in, you and I talked about it before the season, maybe as much as anyone, you're relying on guys who are playing football. And you knew you'd get them back late. A couple guys were involved in some all-star games, which really delayed it even more. You kind of knew this might happen. You'd be significantly better towards the end. Everybody wants to be, but I think you knew it going in.
Yeah, we had, I think I had 4 guys that played football. So when you get those guys into your program, this year we were already kind of playing district games. One kid didn't play either district game before Christmas. And you play so many games from Thanksgiving to Christmas. So when they get to you, there's not 4 days of straight practice. You're practicing once and then you're playing a game. You're practicing twice, maybe playing another game. So it takes a really long time, at least for me, to get those guys acclimated to what we're doing. And, we graduated a couple guys from last year's team. They're pretty good players and had played for 3 years, and we hadn't changed a lot. And you look at this year's team, and we've had to change. We've changed our style completely. Our emphasis is a little bit different. We knew it was going to be a slow process. It's just keeping everybody together and not, like Coach said, hitting the panic button every single time you lose a game. And we put together a schedule where we knew there was a chance we were going to lose some games. And, we're okay with that if it got us ready for these next 3 weeks, because in basketball, that's really all that matters.
Well, talk to me about this, Coach Moore. And your situation next year as you look forward is going to be a little different in terms of guys who play football. If you knew that going in, because you talked about those 4 straight days of practice, would you have done something a little different with the schedule if you really, and maybe you couldn't, you make schedules for 2 years, but ideally, would you have maybe had something a little bit different schedule-wise? You can't help the district games.
Right, and the problem when you do that is your basketball-only kids are starting to hate practice.
True.
So you've got to keep those guys progressing and keep those guys, you can't just say, hey, y'all are going to stay where you're at, and I got to get these other guys caught up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a slide. The sliding scale is always moving. So I don't think I would have changed anything. We like to play a tough schedule. I think Coach has done a great job at Franklin. They played a really tough schedule. Our schedule maybe is not quite that tough, but we played the Blackmans and the Seagulls and teams that we thought would prepare us for that. But looking back on it, I think you've got to play games. Kids, I don't care what anybody says. We like to think as coaches they're going to learn just as much in a practice setting. They don't. We learn way more in a game. So you almost, when you get them back, they just have to learn in a game and in front of 500, 600 people, which is somewhat embarrassing at times for the coach. But it's fine, and we've been doing it long enough to where we don't have to worry about our kids not buying in and things like that. So it's just getting through that and getting out on the other side. And with our league, you talked about some of the scores. If you don't play well, you're not going to win. So every night we know we got to play well in order to have a chance to win. And it's the consistency that we've kind of struggled with early on in league play.
And when both teams play well, it turns into some pretty special nights. We've had a bunch of those nights. Coach Tiger, coming into tonight's game, you're 8-3 in district play, tied with Brentwood for first. Your game on Tuesday, I was at that game. I'm not saying I thought it would be 80-75, but I didn't think it would be 42-22. First quarter, you don't give up a point. I think it's 7-0 at the end of the first. And in the fourth quarter, no field goal. So you have 2 quarters where a team doesn't make a field goal. Have you ever had that happen as a coach?
Not 2. The week before at Nolensville, we were fortunate to have a really good game plan and had a 7-0 lead at the end of the first as well. So that was the second time that it's happened in the first, but not 2 periods like that.
Very
I can
odd.
recall. No, just the guys were really locked in on the game plan. Both we scout really hard, independent scouts really hard, and when you know each other so well, tendency-wise and whatnot, then it can get into those real, tough to score. We didn't score many points either, so, but I was proud of the way the guys were locked in early, and like you said, the way we closed the game as well.
You guys both have a history in this league. Obviously, Coach Moore, you date back to Independence as the head coach there. Coach Tigard at Dixon, you're still in the same league. Mm-hmm. But in almost overnight, this has become a league that the scores used to be in the 70s a lot. This is a defensive-minded, get stops, scout people where they can't get anything. All of a sudden, these are nights, most nights, the girls' games are higher scoring than the boys. That's a unique change, Coach Moore, from maybe what it was when you were at Indy.
Yeah, I think the scouting has definitely improved. I think it's easier to scout, number one, because we can send our stuff to Huddle and they shoot the stats right back to you. So everybody's got 3-point percentage stats and things, especially by this time of the year. You feel pretty good about a kid's 3-point percentage in February. But you can look at our league scores before Christmas in non-league games. It's high scoring. There for a while, Brentwood was scoring 70, 80 points every night.
They were.
I think Franklin can win games a multitude of ways, which I think is going to help them come postseason time. They can play at a bunch of different paces. I've seen Summit scores in the 80s and things like that. So I think it's a tribute to our coaches and our players in our league. You never run a set that the other coach isn't calling out. The other night when we played Nolensville, Coach Gadias, I thought he had my play card because every time I call something, he's yelling backdoor or flare or whatever. So, it's really hard, and it's what makes this league fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Coach Target, I'm wondering, talking about him with the play cards and that kind of stuff. A lot of you guys do that. At some point, though, does that become paralysis of analysis or whatever you call that? There's a fine line of, okay, don't totally worry about it. You got to play a little bit too.
Well, defensively, I think having as much information as possible is never hurts you defensively. You start to get too cute on the offensive end, then that's when things can get stagnant. And so I think I'd rather be, I'm not saying more complicated, but I would rather our guys know the tendencies of anybody that's going to get on the floor that evening than not talk about it at all.
Sure.
I think we get simpler on offense as the year goes on, and then we get probably a little bit more complicated, if you will. I don't know if complicated is the word, but more information is available. And like you said, the numbers you start to trust after a certain amount of time. And then you take your calculated risk, or we do, as far as defensively, where we're willing to lose a game, to whom and who we want to take away.
I think as time's gone by, too, with you talking about that scouting, I feel like basketball, I think football's always done it. I can remember coaching at Beach, and we had a football coach, Roger Holmes. He told me once, I was fascinated by this when I first started coaching. He said, hey, we'll run a play every X games just because the way we switch films with each other, we know we need to show it for this team we're playing in 3 games so they'll get ready for it. I feel like basketball is kind of like that too now, Coach Moore. Maybe not to that level, but it's sort of like there seems to be a little bit more of a chess match based on the scouting than maybe it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, and I think coaches, I don't know if it's a new age coach or just the basketball has changed, and I think we're all more apt to change defenses. If something's not working, where the guys I work for, Barry Workman and Troy Allen, they ain't changing. It doesn't matter. They're going to do what they do, and that's what it is. But I think now, we all you have to be flexible, and even though it's maybe not your philosophy to play this kind of style, you got to play it if that's what fits your personnel.
Well, we're going to talk about that with your team here in just a minute, Coach Moore. Let's do this real quick. Both of you have a guy that I think when you walk in the gym, you're like, oh, that guy looks different. Christian Brown for you, Daniel Patton for you. Let's talk about those two guys because they mean a lot to your team. Let's start with Christian and you, Coach Tiger.
Yeah, well, Christian's he's a double-double guy. You can count on that just about every night. And then his defensive presence is one of the best I've ever had, with his ability to challenge shots at the rim, to take hits at the basket, and then just his presence alone is a nice deterrent. And he's been gobbling up every rebound there is. If you look at our team stats, he has almost as many rebounds as the rest of the team combined. So that's an opportunity. We challenge him to be selfish about that. Go get every single rebound you possibly can, and so every once in a while I'll shoot those numbers off at the rest of the team to try and challenge to get them to rebound as well. And so, just a fantastic player that he puts in the work. That's the thing. That's what is very nice. We've had great players that are just super talented and maybe didn't put in necessarily the work. They were just more talented. Christian has put in the work.
Something I know, you talk about his defensive presence. I've watched you a couple times, and this happened both times. When somebody gets the basket, he comes over and helps, he's there. But even when he's not, he's impacting the shot because they think he's there. You've done a good job defensively, that even when you're not there, they kind of think you're there.
Yeah, I mean, it's, these kids, they see a lot of film. They watch we didn't ever see our opponents when we were going up, They see all this. It's video everywhere. And I think they're just the consciousness of Christian's ability to block shots is probably on some players' minds. Elite players, no, not so much. They're going to score the basketball. But if you're an average Joe and not someone that's usually scoring the basketball around the rim, then it's probably in the back of your head.
Let's talk about Daniel Patton. And one of the greatest things about him for you, Coach Moore, is he's a junior. He'll be back next year. He's one of those guys, I think if you talk about upside going to the next level, and we've got some guys, Christian being one of them, that are going pretty high at the college level, he's in that conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens for him as an individual. But he's got a serious upside. The way he can shoot the ball, handle the ball is pretty special for a guy his size.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll chime in on Christian. I don't think it's subconscious. I think when you see him put a ball in the 10th row, that sticks. He's like a volleyball player when he beats that thing up.
He blocked one against Brentwood. I thought they got to change the ball.
Yeah.
I was like, they need to get a new
He
ball.
is a violent shot blocker.
I tell our cheerleaders before the game, have your head on a swivel, because I mean he really is forceful with his shot blocking.
Stepping up as the AD there, taking care of all your athletes.
Don't want to see any injuries, you know. No, Daniel's new to basketball. I mean, new to team basketball. We got him when he was a freshman. And, I mean, I think Coach Tiger will agree with me. I think they were a team last year that didn't guard Daniel. Didn't have to really worry about his ability to shoot it. And, you know, he took that in the offseason as, I'm going to get in the gym and I'm going to make that one of my strengths. And just to see his growth in 2 years with us, you know, I was talking to a college coach the other day about him, and he's got 18 more months before he's got to be college ready. And, you know, with his skill set and his length, and he works in the weight room, he's going to, you know, I don't think he'll ever look like Christian, but if he can just get himself a little bit stronger, which will help his athleticism, and his skill level puts him at a wing at that next level. And as a 6'7" wing that can really shoot the ball, I think the sky's the limit for him.
Coach, you've had some teams, Laverne's, I always think of you being Laverne.
Appreciate that, Coach.
Well, I do. Not now. I'm talking about coaching. We didn't coach against each other here. So here's the thought that I had looking. Tell me if I'm wrong here. I've seen him put up numbers in terms of scoring, maybe more than I've seen for a player for you. He had a 30-point game, you know, and you're maybe scoring more, I don't know, but in terms of putting the ball in the basket, that says something about him. You're saying they didn't guard him last year, and now he's putting up maybe numbers as high as any player you've had. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's one of the best offensive players I've ever coached at his size. And he can score it. You know, we tell all of our guys, in today's game, 3-level scorers are sort of a thing of the past.
Really are.
You know, usually guys are specialists. Somebody can shoot it real well. Somebody can post a little bit. But I mean, he's truly a kid that he can make threes. He can drive it. He can finish at the rim. He's an unbelievable free throw shooter. You know, just he can score it every way. So you start, I mean, Christian does it and doesn't make a ton of threes, but you look at him, he'll score 10, 12 points off their offense, and then he'll get 6 or 8 off some rebounds, and then he'll make some free throws. You look up, and you know he's averaging 22, 24, something like that. So I mean, we kind of preach that to Daniel is, you know, teams can take away if you only do one thing. But if you can do a multitude of things, and then we made the decision early on to move Daniel, let him play the point this year for our team. So, I mean, he also has to get us into our offense. You know, I mean, I think last night he had 4 assists and no turnovers. Now, that's huge when your point guard can not turn it over and get us into offense and still score.
Coach Tiger, let's talk about some of your other guys. So, Cole Kaiser playing the point for only a sophomore. I think, to me, I've watched him. I saw him improve, I think, in a game. When you played Brentwood at home, they were putting that heat on him like they can do with the zone stuff, full court. He was kind of running for his life in a lot of ways, which a lot of people do. By the end of that game even, I thought you saw him kind of settle down, and then you watch him 2 or 3 weeks later, he doesn't really look like a sophomore now. So it's almost like your opponents, and I get it, they're saying, hey, let's pressure the guards. They don't have experience. You got a weakness that's maybe turning into a strength now.
Well, and it's not just Cole Kaiser, but Colin Robinson has also come on at the same position as well. And so that's a position where we're comfortable playing 2 point guards, you know, and both being sophomores, both have shown tremendous growth throughout the season. And so that has become an area of strength for the team for sure.
Coach Moore, let's talk about your team in terms of results. Big win on Tuesday night at home over Nolensville, 56-48. We've talked about this. Nolensville may be as talented as any team in the district, especially if you're talking about physically imposing. They play really good defense. They kind of play some old school kind of basketball, so it was a great win. But let's also talk about, for you, I call them the big three. I don't know if you do internally, but you talk about Daniel being a junior, but you've got Rylan McKelvey, junior, Carter Ezel, a junior. And I remember, maybe it was a week ago, you got Patton throwing the lob to McKelvey for the dunk, which was totally cool. Talk about those other 2 guys, too.
Yeah, I mean, those three guys have been with us since they were freshmen. Got a ton of experience last year. You know, they were three starters with two pretty good seniors that we graduated, Tanner Lee and Dominic Reed. So they're getting to feel what it's like to be the guy. You know, they go from, on the scouting report, they're number 3, 4, and 5 to now they're probably 1, 1A, and 2. But those guys are my hardest workers. I mean, they're in the gym every day. When practice ends, they're getting the gun out or whatever and getting some extra shots up. You know, if I want to get a message out to the players, those are the three guys I go to. And it's pretty neat to see them grow through our program. And, you know, I think the future is really bright for all three of them. But Carter is a kid who can flat out shoot it. He's working on his other parts of his game, and I think people have seen it. It's gotten better. But, you know, he's going to take his weaknesses and try to get better in the offseason. We're going to try to maximize his strengths right now. And, you know, Rylan is a kid that, you know, nobody really knows where Rylan came from. He played at Freedom, but never did really get a lot done there. And he came to us when he was a freshman and started sort of just fell in love with working on his game. And, you know, I tell everybody, I mean, there's nothing he can't do. You'll see him block a shot, and you're like, holy cow, where did that come from? And then he can shoot it, and he can drive it, and he can finish it. And I mean, he's catching lobs at 6 foot tall. That's not really ordinary. But you know, he's new to being good, and it sort of has made him hungry and made him want to stay and keep working. And you know, I think the future is really bright for those three.
You know, something I thought was pretty neat, Coach Moore. You and I have talked about it. I think it's worth the audience hearing this. You guys host the region tournament last year. You want to be playing in the region tournament, but you're not. Those three, they were cleaning, they were picking stuff up. I mean, they worked as hard as anybody at that region tournament. I was like, that tells you something about those three young men.
Yeah, I mean, they're high character kids. You know, all of them are in AP honors classes. They're going to be really high ACT kids. But you know, if we need something done at the gym, if we have a cleaning day or something like that, those three are the first ones there. You know, and if it's at 2 o'clock, they're not getting there at 1:55. They're getting there at 1:30. They've made me get to work quicker because I don't want them to beat me there. And all that stuff matters because the other kids fall in line. You know, if your three so-called most talented kids are doing it, everybody else is going to do it. Then I don't have to worry about that. If they're watching film, the other kids are going to do it as well. So it's nice to have those guys as leaders. And I think they would tell you that that's a program thing. And they've watched guys before them, the Miles Catawalas and the kids that we've had the past couple of years. They prepared the right way. They practiced the right way. They lived the right way. And that's how you kind of develop a program. No
doubt about that, Coach. A reminder again on the standings. 4 and 7, we've got Page, Summit, Ravenwood, Centennial, Independence 7 and 4, Nowensville 5 and 6, Brentwood and Franklin 8 and 3. I looked at your schedules. You guys may not even know this because I know how it is as a coach. You're just looking what's in front of you. You both travel to Ravenwood. Coach Moore, you're going to host Summit. You're at Page also, Coach Tiger. So there's really a lot that can be determined with this league. So lots of possibilities mathematically. But let me ask you this. I'll start with you, Coach Tiger. The playing at home's nice, but especially this year, you might have an opponent you don't have to say who it is, but hey, I'd rather play a road game than play that team at home. It's really going to be about the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the matchups are everything. Anybody in the league is capable of beating anyone. I think it's for us. I've said it earlier today. You know, about being healthy, being the best version of Franklin. I think that's very important. And we want to play at home. I mean, there's never a time where I want to go on the road. So we have a good, tremendous fan base that always provides a ton of energy. And so, you know, whoever that opponent may be, hopefully we'll have a good plan. And like I said, be healthy and play our best basketball that evening. And I think, you know, for our teams that in our league that win that first round matchup, I think there's a real opportunity to go deep.
Coach Moore, same thing with your team. You've still got a shot to host a game, but the matchup is maybe more important than that hosting, even though you'd love to host.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to host with the right matchup.
Right, yeah, that would be ideal. But I think that's such a weird game because it's a single game. It's at a 6 o'clock start time. We're used to playing at 7:30. So, we were fortunate enough last year to host and got upset by Brentwood. But I think there's a lot of pressure on the home team. The crowd's usually not what it's like for a normal game. And I think your kids it's just everything's a little bit weird and wonky when it comes to that game. And that's why it's such a tough game to win, And Brentwood upset us in 3-6 game and went on to the state tournament last year. So I definitely agree with Coach that whoever the 4 teams that win that night have a chance to play a lot of basketball.
And if we were to, once you get to the region, if we happen to sweep, we're supposed to go to the other region and play, but we could even come back and play in our gyms for the region semifinals. All right, as we wrap up here, again, we're talking about tonight's Battle of Franklin. Always a big game, always means something. But tonight's also, which you guys do once a year, is our Natchez tribute game, where once a year you wear the throwback uniforms because both schools have that Natchez part of their school that's there. If you take a look back, if that school still existed, it's got some Franklin's on, it's got some Centennial's on. We've got people who graduated from Franklin that are now Centennial people. So it's kind of a cool deal. You guys switch up wearing those throwback uniforms at different home sites. So Coach Tiger, this year it's you guys, and I know you love this game.
Yeah, without question. It's something that the community really looks forward to. We always have guests that wouldn't necessarily be coming to every single game that come back that were Natchez graduates, and so it really means a lot to reflect back and honor those individuals that achieved so much during their time in Natchez and then post Natchez.
And you guys talked about this, Coach Moore, being history teachers. It's kind of even a cooler thing for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's great for kids to understand the history and kind of how all this stuff we live today, how it got to where it is today. And when those guys come back to the games, we'll let them be out on the floor when they're introducing them and things like that. And I mean, they're yelling and, they have a relationship with those guys. And so it's pretty cool for them to get to wear the same uniforms. And even though it may be a weird look for some folks, I think it's historically accurate. And, and our kids love it. I can't speak for coaches, but I mean, they love wearing that different. I don't love it as a coach because everybody's got different numbers on. So it's hard for me to tell who's who, especially if there's like twins or something like that, like guys y'all used to have. I couldn't tell them apart, But our community loves it. But my players love it. I mean, they'll be cheering for those guys when they announce them, and they grew up with them and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a special night.
It's really neat. Coach, you're talking about the different numbers. You were an assistant for Barry Wortman at the he's notorious for calling a guy the wrong name. It'd be the best to wear those uniforms against him.
He wouldn't know any difference. He knows the number. He couldn't tell you the name, though. Broadsack.
Broadnecks. Guys, I appreciate you being here. I know you're busy. It's a big game tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Coach.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for the Coaches Show. We'll see you next time.